Greetings and welcome to the AlonzoBash Podcast, where art and culture meets activism. In this powerful and inspiring episode, Alonzo sat down with media icon Mr. Wendell Constantine, renowned producer, news anchor, communication strategist, and corporate executive from the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. With over 4 decades in the media industry, Mr. Constantine takes us on an extraordinary journey through his life and career. From his early beginnings as a 10-year-old appearing on Auntie Hazel's 12 and Under, to commanding international stages as a Master of Ceremonies for global leaders, including former U.S. President Barack Obama, his story is one of excellence, discipline, and purpose. Widely recognized as the original host and producer of the iconic teen talent showcase Nescafé Partytime, Mr. Constantine reflects on shaping youth culture and media in Trinidad and Tobago. In this episode, he dives into empowering the next generation through media and mentorship, the critical role of state media in national development, how Fatima College helped shape his path and discipline, a gripping first-hand account of the 1990 coup in Trinidad and Tobago, invaluable lessons from a lifetime at the top of Caribbean media, his current position as CEO for the Foundation for Enhancement and Enrichment of Life, and his lifelong passion for singing. Among his music achievements are roles in operas, classical and Broadway musicals, as well as special performances in North America and the Caribbean. This is more than an interview. It's a masterclass in legacy, leadership, and Caribbean excellence. Real people, real conversations. AlonzoBash Podcast starts now.
Greetings and welcome to AlonzoBash Podcast. I'm your host, Alonzo Bash. And of course, today, man, we join. But I'm so excited about this one, and I'll tell you why. Because this brother right here, over 40 years in the media space, or 40 years in broadcasting, rather, media personality, producer, CEO, and of course, an excellent singer. We don't want to waste no time, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Wendell Constantine. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Alonzo. Thank you to all of your subscribers and followers. This is an honor and privilege for me. You normally have interactions with outstanding Trinbagonians and phenomenal Caribbean personalities. So to be added to the group of individuals that you choose to chat with is really a privilege and an honor. Congrats on the work that you're doing. And thank you for promoting what is the best of the Caribbean and the best of Trinidad and Tobago via your platform.
Well, thank you so much, sir. That coming from you means a lot. I really, really, really appreciate it, man, because, I remember watching you as a little kid, growing up in Trinidad and, we go talk about the different shows and so forth. But yeah, I remember the name, man, Wendell Constantine. Your name, when it comes to broadcasting and media, your name is up there. You're one of the greats.
Well, it's an earned position, and it's not an earned position that's taken very lightly, especially when one considers the mentors that were in my life during the early stages of my career. And
Yes.
by early, I mean from my teens all the way through to my 20s. Whether you speak of the legendary Hazel Ward Redmond, the work and contributions of the stalwarts and elders of broadcasting in Trinidad and Tobago, and I speak of June Gonzalez, I speak of Allyson, Hennessy, and Judy Alcantara, and Judy Chung Dennison, my coaches and guides in many ways, persons like Maurice Brash, Anthony Harford. My first radio guide was Anthony Dennison, Ian the Goose Alligor, Tony Lee. It just goes on. Russell Winston and Winston Maynard. There have been a number of outstanding and top sons and daughters of Trinidad and Tobago in the sphere of broadcasting who learned from the best of Canada and England and America and took some level of interest in ensuring that they shared their knowledge and guidance with youngsters like myself at the time, like Lisa Wickham, like Jason Williams, and so many others that came through the ranks. We are the fortunate ones because whatever you see being projected from us, it came from the influence and inspiration and, more importantly, example that came from these outstanding legends of broadcasting from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. When it comes to names, you have a very good memory when it comes to names, man.
I learned from them. I learned from them.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. All right. So let's get into your backstory. So you're born in Trinidad, the Woodbrook, Trinidad, to be exact. That area. You grew up in that
Yes.
area?
So the family home is in Woodbrook, Port of Spain. I am a Woodbrook boy. My uncles had the great fortune of bending wire with George Bailey in the days of what would be considered big mass. I had the good fortune of carrying a costume or two for the children of Alvin Bailey, who was our neighbor just across the street. I grew up a stone's throw away from Woodbrook Secondary, a couple streets away from the St. Patrick's Church and Newtown Boys School, where I attended primary school. My first introduction at education was through Miss Turner, who, of course, had her Montessori and daycare, etc., right opposite TTT at 11 in Marva Road. So maybe from the very beginning, the first time I left my home was probably destined to be somewhere near that place called Television House. And in my secondary years, I went out to Fatima College. I eventually went into production, as in technical production, broadcast radio, broadcast television for a private production facility. Then went across to the University of the West Indies, on a campus, Jamaica, and attended the Caribbean Institute of Mass Communications. As there, I also sang with the University Singers of Jamaica, then back to Trinidad. And from the time I returned, and performances, celebrity events, major national conferences, and then into freelance mode at TTT and NBS Radio, which were the state-owned media at the time. And from that, then the career took off.
Wow. Wow. Very impressive, man. All right. So let's take it back a little bit. So Woodbrook, what was let's start with your parents. Your mom and dad. What was the family structure like growing up?
Right. So by the time I was born,
Yeah.
I'm the youngest of three. My brother and sister are 4 and 5 years respectively ahead of me. Mom and dad were preparing for the rest of their lives and their career. It would have been great for them to stay in Trinidad and Tobago, but of course, sometimes the good old USA comes a calling, and if you don't answer the call when it comes, well, you may miss out on an opportunity. So my brother, my sister, and I, we were fortunate that we were raised by our maternal grandparents, and that resulted in us being in Woodbrook, and that's really the Constantine family home. And my friends on the street, we got up to all sorts of mischief during the vacation periods, whether you're playing jockey in the canal with a pallet stick, or you're waiting for boiled corn by Miss Daisy up by Woodbrook Sec on an evening, or you get permission from your grandparents and parents to pop some popcorn, and during the vacation, walk through the street selling a bag of popcorn for like, $1 or 50 cents or what have you. Those were some of the thrills. You could play on the street quite easily. You kept your neighborhood clean. You were respectful to your elders and those who held some kind of office. The joy, I think, at a certain time was that on the eve of every national holiday, there would be either a pan round the next side or some kind of entertainment music passing through the street at midnight. So you got up just for the thrill of being able to see that. Being in Woodbrook meant that you didn't have to go far for Carnival Monday and Tuesday. My first introduction to leaving home and being around what could be considered mass on the streets was the same year as Kitchener's Rainorama. So we're talking about mass in May. When I got my first camera, I sought permission from my grandmother, and I went up to the Queen's Park Savannah to take pictures of horses on race day. And then I went to see the Red Cross Carnival to take pictures of costumes on Children's Carnival Day. And of course, well, we would be too young to afford to go to mega concerts. Although I know my sister did get to see Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 at the Queen's Park Savannah.
Wow.
I, on the other hand, would simply steal away from home and go and sit in the National Stadium for the sound checks of Miami Sound Machine and a series of other groups that came to Trinidad, so that I knew at least what the show was going to look like later on in the night by being there for the rehearsal. My passion and the thing that gives me the oxygen is really music. I've been performing since I was about 8 or 9 years old. And then I bravely went to a television talent contest called 12 and Under when I was about 10 and a half years old. And magic happened after that.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, man. I remember seeing that clip. I actually went back and did some research, and when I saw the clip, I'm gonna be 100% honest, man. I actually got a bit emotional. I'm gonna tell you why. For some strange reason, I remember that episode.
Wow.
Because your voice is so distinctive. I remember Auntie Hazel, and presenting, and you were talking, and you always have a gift with words and your pronunciation. Very clear, very, direct. And that's one
Thank
thing
you.
I remember, from since that time to now.
So that comes from my family environment. My grandfather and grandmother insisted that we speak properly, that we are clear in our expressions of thought and conversation.
Yeah.
I tell you, on a Sunday, based
Mhm.
on my grandfather's input into society, my grandmother was a staff nurse at the Port of Spain General Hospital. My grandfather would arrange for a private taxi to come to the home. We would be dressed in crisply starched
Yeah.
clothing, my brother, my sister, and I. And we were taken to what could be considered at that time the Texaco Sports Club, which is that building just to the corner of Cipriani Boulevard and the Queen's Park Savannah, Queen's Park West, where
Yes.
there would be afternoon tea. And the opportunity wasn't so much about going to afternoon tea,
Yeah.
but to demonstrate that you knew how to use a knife and fork, you knew how to ask for a service, whatever the serving may be, whether it's tea or juice or water, and
Yes.
that you could be present in conversation, wise enough to know not to get involved in conversation, but able enough to be able to dialogue with persons and chat with persons. So it gave us a certain sort of preliminary exposure to being integrated into society. But then, by the time my brother and sister had headed off to the States after
Yeah.
secondary school, I had some occasions where I would be home alone with my
Yeah.
grandfather. He would have been visually impaired by that time.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time watching test cricket
Yeah.
on the television. Being in front of the television, watching test cricket,
Yeah.
the commentary was always excellent. That's the only way to describe it.
That's a
And
good
there's something about it that caught my attention. So it wasn't too long after that whenever I heard the commentator deliver a line or a sentence or a segment, I would attempt to repeat what the commentator said.
Okay.
And as you know, Trinbagonians are very good at
Mhm.
copying and mimicking that which is in the world stage.
Yes.
So
Yes.
they would say Walsh to Temple, Walsh to Temple, and it's down to the boundary for four. Temple strikes, and it's down to the boundary for four. And
Yeah.
that just became very easy for me to do. It's down to the
Mhm.
boundary for four. Does it
Wow.
mean anything now? Perhaps, given how West Indies
No,
cricket is going, it
that's
means a lot when it goes down to the boundary for four.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that was one example. The other was the news. So Panorama was, of course, important viewing time across the country. And
Yes.
we must appreciate that in those days, radio and television programmed the society. Were we to have done, and you're going to find me ebbing and flowing through the things that are in the current domain of our country. Were
Yeah.
we to have been a district or an area that did something wrong, it would be moments after that you would hear on radio the
Yeah.
voice of the Roman Catholic Archbishop, the Anglican bishop, the head of the Baha'i faith, a representative of the Hindu community, a representative of the Muslim community, somebody
Yeah.
from the Presbyterian Church, giving us guidance on that which we should correct as a result of what we would have been found to have done wrong. So,
So,
uh,
so let's stick a pin
sure.
right there. So you're saying back then on the radio, let's say there was a particular, situation not taking place in the community, you will have religious leaders on the radio giving their input on those
Their contribution. That would have been an editorial decision by the respective newsrooms. The head of news may say, well, we bounced down our old lady on Frederick Street,
Yeah.
right? And the fella run off after.
Right.
Not long afterwards, in order to get a comment from the society, you'd
Mhm.
have the natural sound from the persons in the area. Nobody saw him, he just disappeared, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But then that would become front page news. And so it would be soon after that the media would have contacted heads of religions and influencers in the
Mhm.
society at that time,
You
and
did.
they would come on. And here was the line. So you knew you had done something wrong, right?
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters, good afternoon. This is the Archbishop here. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about A, B, C, D, E. And it
Wow.
would immediately resonate with
Mhm.
whatever was the matter at hand.
Yeah, the day. Wow.
Because religious leaders at that time
Yep.
were revered and respected in the society that we were in.
Yes.
So too, persons who held public office. And that begs the question about where we blur the lines in wanting to be free to do what we want as citizens of a country,
Yeah.
when there isn't really absolute freedom. It's constitutionally contained, all right? Versus when we assume some level of office, we're not as free to be exactly who we are because the office is larger than
Yeah.
the individual holding the office. And so you're expected to conduct yourself a particular way. Naturally, we've lost our way from that now.
Yeah.
Persons may feel that they're free to say and do as they please because that's what freedom allows.
Yeah.
With freedom comes responsibility. Leaders had a great responsibility in the 70s, 80s, up to the 90s, I would say, in Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow. So much. Listen, man, I'm so prepared because I know I'm going to learn a lot from you. All right. So Fatima College played a big part in, your upbringing, education and so forth. What was the experience like at Fatima?
Well, Alonzo, one of the words or one of the phrases that we should use for this podcast is full circle. And here's why. I entered Fatima College in 1976. Of course, yes, I would have just been on 12 and under.
Yeah.
So my face would have been known, but I was just another student in Form 1.
Mm.
However, the principal at the time was Clive Panton, a
Yep.
member of the Panton family and the brother of the Archbishop and Father Jerry Panton, who founded Serval.
Wow.
And he was also our Spanish teacher.
Okay.
During that time, the, the Ministry of Education and the teaching fraternity was attracted to trying to find ways of teaching using video.
Okay.
All right. So audio visuals became a sort of extracurricular and technical vocational activity within the schools that could afford it. Equipment, cameras, projectors, lights, etc.
Yeah.
Clive Banton would have come to me about 2 weeks after I was in the college and said that he wanted me to come across to the audiovisual room at the college
Okay.
after school on a particular weekday. I went over and I suddenly realized that I was in a studio. There were other college students, but also some of the other teachers in the college, and they
Okay.
were preparing a room for a skit to be recorded.
Mm.
And Clive Panton said, I want you to be part of this, and I would like you to read these lines
Yes.
and dramatize them with these others. And one of them happened to be Maurice Brash, the other happened to be Joy Gould James, and the third happened to be Judy Alcantara.
Wow.
And within 2 weeks of being at Fatima College, I was now child talent on the pilot episode of a series called A la Orden, which
Okay.
was a project to teach Spanish in schools using video. And
Mm.
most of the scenes came from the Vamos Amigos textbook series
Yeah.
that most of the secondary schools were using. So the pilot that had this 2 week in college student went
Yes.
to Dr. Eric Williams and the Minister of Education. The
Oh, wow.
grant was approved, and they then, as colleges of Fatima, St. Teresa's, and Mukurapo Mukurapo Junior Second Senior Comprehensive,
Yeah.
came together and we produced this A la Orden series. Now, here's the fun fact.
Yes.
The technical personnel were all teachers and or technicians from the respective schools. They eventually came together as a production unit, naturally, because the show had to be recorded and edited each week. And when they decided to resign or move on to new projects, they came together under a production company called Banyan Productions. And Banyan went on to produce Gael the series, as well as do a lot of work with the United Nations.
Yeah.
And eventually they applied for and received permission for a license, a broadcast license, and that started Gael TV. Errol Fabian is now responsible for Gael TV, but it started at Fatima College with the personnel who became the owners of Banyan Television being under Clive Panton's direction and guidance in creating educational material for secondary schools. Fun fact.
Wow. Fun fact. Yeah, man. Guy, a lot of us watched Guy, especially back in the 80s.
With cultural
Yeah. You mentioned Clive Panton again. I've heard you in interviews. You said the Panton family played a major role in your career.
Correct. Well, when Clive Panton retired from Fatima College, he went into politics. He subsequently became Minister of Education under the National Alliance for Reconstruction government. The NAR under Arthur N.R. Robinson had a tumultuous time in office.
Yes.
They came in as a fresh administration, but of course, because of the economic circumstances of the country at the time, landed up having to face the temperature at the time and the actions of an attempted coup and an insurrection. You would have had Dominic Calipasad, a legend in his own right, on your podcast a few weeks ago. And,
Yes.
and so, of course, we know the story of what happened there.
Yes.
But moreover, Clive Panton then eventually demitted politics and went into non-profit work and founded an organization called the Foundation for the Enhancement and Enrichment of Life.
Yes.
It's actually acronymed FEEL. Persons who are viewing this may remember that there was once a concert at the Queen's Park Oval called We Can, where the entrance to the concert, featuring a number of Caribbean outstanding popular artists at the time, was cans of food. Panton was the beneficiary, and his organization, FEEL, was the beneficiary of these cans of food, which then went on to assist numbers of families that were impacted by heavy flooding, rain, and home devastation at that time. In the somewhere around 2009 or 10, I was asked to serve on the board of FEEL as a director. And most recently, after the pandemic in 2022, I assumed the responsibility as CEO of FEEL, which was the responsibility that Clive Panton held after he founded FEEL. There was a board of directors, and technically he reported to the board of directors. So a full circle moment that this child that entered Fatima College being asked to do Spanish television episodes under the guidance of his school principal, fast forward becomes the CEO of the very foundation that the same principal founded. And what we do right now is we serve the vulnerable and the less fortunate in society by bringing in staple foodstuffs, cleaning supplies, household supplies, education supplies, hospital beds. At one point, we brought in wheelchairs as well, all to assist the less fortunate in the country. And I'm very proud to say that the work that has been done by FEEL is a testimony and tribute to our principal, Clive Panton. It continues to be well recognized by the Fatima College fraternity. And we're at this stage in our 33rd year of service to over 113 nonprofit organizations in the country that need food, clothing, cleaning, household, medical, and other supplies to assist well over 250,000 affected and impacted persons in our country before we even talk about migrants and other situations. You would probably hear that FEEL and the Living Water community are normally the two umbrella nonprofits in the country that assists whenever there are major flooding, any sort of hurricane devastation. We've assisted Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Montserrat, Nassau, Bahamas, Jamaica, whenever those countries have been really affected by natural events, especially during the hurricane season, etc. So this is really as I said, I am humbled in so many ways to be in the position that I'm in, and serving the less fortunate is really a blessing from Almighty to be able to make a difference in people's lives when they don't know where the next meal is coming from.
Yeah, you guys do great works, man. Like I said, I was doing some research on it, and a lot of organizations, and you guys. I understand the last budget I read was how many million? I don't want to quote the wrong numbers.
So during the pandemic to 2020 to 22, basically, we would have done just about 100 million TT dollars worth of service to Trinidad and Tobago. And on an average annual basis, we're somewhere in the vicinity of about $40 to $45 million worth of staple food stuff that comes into the country. Much of it comes from the United States and Asia, and I'm talking about rice and beans and peas and sustainable soy packs, etc. But when you think of, and here's how it translates, when you think of the clothing line at Target and Walmart, etc., or the pharmaceuticals that Walgreens and others have to dispense with because they've gone out of circulation, etc., or the season has changed, these items get donated. And we have a very good relationship with Food for the Poor, an organization out of Coconut Creek in Florida,
Okay.
And that's the source where
Mm.
they do the coordination,
Yeah.
and they assist many Caribbean islands, Jamaica, Bahamas, Puerto Rico, coming straight down to St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana.
Yeah.
And we are fortunate to be an affiliate of theirs in order to assist the less fortunate here.
Oh wow. You also have is it the 1,000 Fee Club initiative that you guys doing as
Right.
well?
So those of you who are, and all of this is available on our website, fieldtt.org. Those of you who have the good fortune of
Yeah.
being well sustainably employed are encouraged, if you would like, to make a donation over a year of a maximum of 1,000 TT dollars. And in making that contribution, you're actually being part of a fraternity that we can then sensitize whenever we're doing work. And if you would like to volunteer your time whenever we have a major incident, and
Okay.
there's a need for packaging of hampers, etc., you're
Mm.
part of that workforce or volunteer force that we would call on first. What the 1,000 Club actually is a way for persons who feel, no pun intended, that they would like to make a contribution, but they want to have assurance
Yeah.
that it is going to assist
Mhm.
persons that are actually in need.
Yep.
That's where field comes in. We can validate, because of our audits and activities, that our
Yeah.
nonprofit organizations are actually helping persons less fortunate
Yes.
than all of us.
You mentioned 1,000 TT. I'm based in the US, so that's like what I'm like 150 US, I believe. But you said
About,
yeah,
just
that's
about,
so that's how often you
yeah.
per year? Okay, okay. So every year.
How hard is that? 150 US for a year.
Oh yeah.
And you'll get to know what's happening with about 250,000 individuals, just like that.
Okay.
That's a great ratio, right?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna put my. I'm not. I was gonna say I'm not gonna say I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth, but I definitely would like to become a member.
You
Yeah.
certainly can. It's available on the website, fieldtt.org, but I will share the information for you so that it can always be circulated to your followers. Of course, you'll get followers and we'll get followers, and together we build an ecosystem, because there are a number of persons, as you could well appreciate, sending a barrel nowadays is a problem, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
big.
Sending a box with foodstuff in it nowadays is still a problem, right? So when you have to do that and you encounter more hiccups than anything else,
Yeah.
and you know that you want to be able to help the fellas in the yard who have a difficulty, or the old lady up the street who can't move anymore, we provide basically that opportunity through non-profit organizations working in communities. Field makes sure not to go into a community and compete with the
Mhm.
non-profit organization that is of that community, because
Yeah.
they have an important role.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So part of my days, early, early mid teens, 20s,
Teenager,
teenager. Right.
well,
Go ahead.
music festival.
Uh,
I was part of a teenage music group called the Maria Alonzo Goretti Group, which
are
was
you serious?
students from both Holy Name Convent and Fatima College.
Yeah.
And that is the group where you would have heard a number of religious songs of long ago. Because
Yeah.
they came out of Holy Name, they
Mhm.
were also together on the album with the Holy Name Convent Choir, and a number of different musicians, including Dennis D'Souza and his band, Curtis Pear and George Ningwai, of course, from Image and Company,
Yeah.
who had the Dixieland Steel Orchestra, etc. And what we all did was record religious music at that time. So when you hear your elders singing, "Hear, O Lord, the sound of my call," or "Wake up, my people," or the Goretti song, etc., it
Mhm.
comes from that era
Uh,
of persons who were able to record religious music and eventually be able to go on tour. So as a teenager, I was part of the Goretti Group's tour to St. Catharines, Ontario. We were guests of the United Nations during the International Year of Peace as a youth group from the Caribbean that spread the powerful message of peace through music. We recorded some works in whilst we were in the States. We
Mhm.
were guests of the Governor General of St. Vincent and the Grenadines,
Oh, wow.
and a series of performances across Grenada and many, of course, cultural and other events here in Trinidad and Tobago, thanks to the consciousness of Maria Alonzo, a performer in her own right, but also a teacher of languages at Holy Name Convent, who was also performing in her off time from school at the Holiday Inn,
Yeah.
and realized that at Christmas time, a number of foreigners were always in the hotel, but with no Christmas cheer.
Yeah.
So we were the students that came along and gave that Christmas cheer that eventually became a big group.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
So there was Goretti Group, there was the television thing. I was also involved in the Fatima College Audiovisual Club,
Okay.
and that exposed me to radio and television and elements of film production. And no sooner had I finished with my studies at Fatima, I went immediately into the world of work and started as a junior technical operator at the Catholic Communication Studios at St. Finbar's Church in Diego Martin, and was part of the original production team for placing more religious programs on national TV. There's a story that goes along with that, and when we reach to there, we can chat about it.
All right. So you mentioned singing again. I know that's a deep passion of yours. Trinity Tenors. Explain to me. Is
Yep.
that a group? Or what was
Yes,
that?
so it's similar to your Il Divo or the outstanding tenors of Pavarotti, Carreras, Domingo.
Okay.
That you have the outstanding voices of John Thomas, of Marlon DeBeek, who
Yeah.
is now deceased. He would have passed a couple of years back. And
Yeah.
yours truly. We saw the opportunity after a series of different shows and events that we were always performing in, and particularly had the opportunity during the productions of Christmas Joy by Mr. Brian McFarlane, a creative mind and talent in his own right, that we happened to be able to blend our voices very well together.
Yeah.
The precursor to that group included Raymond Edwards, Nigel Floyd, Eddie Cumberbatch, Michael Zephyrin, yours truly, and then
Yeah.
eventually two groups came out of that: QED, Raymond, Nigel, and Eddie, and the Trinity tenors, John, Marlon, and Wendell.
Oh, wow. Wow. Man.
So if you think of Il Divo, or you think of anything that has a quartet of tenor voices, or you think of the top three tenors of the world,
Yeah.
that's us, except I dare say that there are times when we sound far better than perhaps their recordings might have. And that's
Yeah.
not a boast, that's just a fortune that we've experienced.
Fortune. So, I have to go back a little bit. At a young age, because you said that you went on 12 and under at what, 8? You were
Yeah.
8, 9? All right.
No,
So,
I was 10 and a half, not as young as 8. Perhaps wanted to go since 8, but I was 10 and a half.
all right. So, at what age did you discover that you had a voice, that you had a talent? Because your voice is different. It's not like a person could just regularly sing. You actually sing tenor, which is, now you're
Yeah.
professional, but back then,
Yeah.
how did
So
you
it would have been
discover?
about it was in primary school. Things happen in my life that are symbolic in nature. Our music teacher at Newtown Boys School was Mrs. Ivy Telfer. She is actually the mother of the outstanding announcer and first broadcast on television to read the news, Mr. Mervyn Telfer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And her grandson, Jason Telfer, and I were in primary school together at Newtown Boys. And one particular Friday, I happened to be standing at the very back of the classroom, closest to the door.
Yeah.
And whilst we were warming up our voices with the typical scales and musical journeys, pigeon flew into the classroom,
Yeah.
landed on my shoulder. I
You
didn't. I continued singing. The
Yeah.
pigeon continued staying on my shoulder for what felt like an eternity. And eventually it turned around and flew off. Life is strange when things that you cannot explain actually occur. Like, how does a bird fly into a classroom?
Right.
And when it flies in, why would it land on someone?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it normally just flutter up in the sky or go into the rafters, etc.? What's it doing landing on a child? And does that have any meaning or symbolism in any form? Well, you receive it as I experienced it, and you take from that whatever you'd like to take from it. But I'll tell you, it wasn't too long after that I was being trained and being put into church choirs and singing with Miss Telfer, who was the accompanist at the St. Patrick's Church in Newtown as well, and singing with the children's choir, and then singing with the parish choirs, and then eventually singing for 4 church services every weekend for what felt like from age 11 all the way to about 24.
Yeah.
Right? So my life was always in a rehearsal mode. There was always a rehearsal that I was in. But maybe that pigeon, dove, bird, winged creature was there to wake or enliven an opportunity within me.
Yeah.
Because I don't see anything as circumstantial or happenstance. There is a purpose for everything that takes place.
Mm.
And by the time I was 11,
Yeah.
my brother, sister, and I were. I had just finished
Yeah.
common entrance, and our prize, basically, or a gift, was that mom sent for us to spend the summer
Yeah.
in Washington D.C.,
Okay.
where she worked. And my sister was going to be staying. My brother and I would be coming back to finish secondary school and me go into secondary school. But mom worked opposite the White House. And the office that she worked at was Riggs National Bank. And Riggs at that time was a prestigious financial institution, really dealing with portfolios and, of course, assisting many in the diplomatic community with their accounts when they were assigned to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And she sent us to take the White House tour.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we went across the street, paid
Yeah.
for the tour, and stood in line on the fence, the railing of the White House, where you
Yeah.
would normally just, of course, follow with the rest of the visitors and
Yeah.
eventually get inside. So we didn't get to tour the White House, but before we got to tour the White House, there was some commotion on the lawn on the inside of the fence,
Yeah.
and we saw plenty guys in suits coming towards the area where my brother, myself, and my sister were, and there was a hand sticking out through the railing, shaking hands with persons in line. And the three of us got the good fortune to shake the hand of the President of the United States, President Gerald Ford, at
Oh,
that
wow.
time,
Yeah.
after only being in the United States for less than 24 hours. We arrived on a Sunday and we were shaking hands with the president on Monday.
Oh, wow.
How does that happen? Is that
Yeah.
coincidence too? Is that another dove? I don't know. Is that another pigeon? But if you see the full circle, this guy then had the privilege in 2009 to introduce the President of the United States, the
Mm.
first African American President of the United States,
Yeah. But I
on this soil in the
Mm.
Republic of Trinidad and Tobago as
Yeah.
one of the leaders attending the OAS Summit of the Americas.
Yeah.
So be careful whose hands you shake when you're a child. You just might have some interaction with them later on in life. And that's just how life has been for me, Alonzo. Several occasions of
Mhm.
that which impacted my youth,
Yeah.
also having purposeful opportunity in my adult years. And
Yeah.
I am thankful for that. It's a privilege. I do not take it lightly at all. It is not just being fortunate, it's being selected by that which is greater than us to have some legitimate purpose
Yeah.
to make a difference in the society in which you operate. So,
Mhm.
fun fact.
Fun fact. Fun fact. So, you had the opportunity to introduce and meet many dignitaries and head of states over the years. Of course, you
Yes.
met President Barack Obama. How was that experience?
Well, as office holders go, I expected the personality to be very much what we saw on screen
Yeah.
in White House briefings and whenever he had to deliver addresses. Very certain. It is clear that those who are responsible for keeping the President of the United States in the loop
Yes.
would have briefed him well before he entered any room. It
Yeah.
is abundantly clear.
Yes.
There are two things going on at the same time. He's in the moment, or at least the way he presented himself was that he was in the moment. I'm here as a world leader at a conference, but he's also paying attention to the environment in which he's in, and some of his closed comments or suggestions, normally we call them hot mic now,
Yeah.
would be a little bit more relevant to what he's experiencing at the time. As a personality, warm, gracious, very aware of the office that he held, and
Yeah.
very aware that he was on an island, yet on the world stage at the same time. A few months later, I then had the opportunity to be one of the co-hosts of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And on that occasion, then I had the good fortune of introducing Her Majesty the Queen, Queen
Oh,
Elizabeth,
wow.
right here in Trinidad and Tobago. So you don't get too much further than that
Yeah,
in
man.
terms of opportunities.
Man, that is amazing, amazing. All right. So You went on to university and you spent some time in Jamaica. Yeah, how long were you
Yes.
in Jamaica?
Loved Jamaica. This was in the 80s, mid 80s. I was fortunate that there was a scholarship afforded for advanced television production and, of course, mass communications education.
Yeah,
I was fortunate to be educated by persons like Professor Rex Nettleford, Professor Agric Brown, Professor Roy Auger. Whilst I went there to do television, I landed up being used as talent for the radio classes that were taking place. And so now you immediately see that the singer who
yeah,
knows how to enunciate their words is
mm,
now being coached in radio. And so that kind of goes together. But he
yeah,
was there to learn television or to qualify in television, and
yeah,
that gave me a big ecosystem. I am thankful for my Jamaica academic years only because it also gave me the good privilege of singing with one of the outstanding groups of Jamaica, and that is the University Singers under, at the time, Dr. Noel Dexter. And movement and stage was always directed again by Professor Rex Nettleford. We toured many of the parishes,
yes,
particularly singing on weekends. So I learned the country on
okay,
weekend, and I studied in the country during the week.
yeah,
And what that did was give me a deeper singing purpose. We can be, as I said earlier on, we can be very good at creating the impression
yes,
as Trinbagonians of our ability. Jamaicans don't create an impression. Jamaicans give it to you as they are,
mm,
authentic.
yeah,
And perhaps what you are experiencing now is that Jamaica allowed me to marry that which is all the creative and all the bells and whistles and glitz of what happens as a Trinbagonian performer with the authenticity. What do you do with your hands? Where do your eyes look? When you reach into your inner spirit to emote a word or a line or a phrase, how many different ways could you do it
yeah,
for it to actually be right for the
mm,
listener? And when I have the opportunity to assist with mass communications or broadcast courses, I help the students to appreciate where you place the emphasis in a sentence. I'll give you this. Words are useless unless and phrases make the difference. Words are useless, phrases make the difference.
make,
Words are useless, phrases make the difference.
mm,
Words are useless, phrases make the difference. 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 Words are useless, phrases make the difference.
mm,
It depends where you place the emphasis will determine how truly what you say is received by the audience.
yes, yes,
Yeah. And
mm,
and then there's a bit of showbiz inside there because if you're having a problem with what you have to deliver, slow down.
yeah,
Don't ever try to rush over it. Take your time.
take your time. Wow. All right, so you returned to Trinidad, and how did you end up at TTT?
Okay. Um, so the television talent time was this child, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah,
But Auntie Hazel would always invite him to make a guest appearance at her children's hospital concert on an annual basis.
okay,
I was also accompanied most of the time in my performances by Auntie Hazel's friend, advisor, and accompanist, Mr. Morris Connor. As you know, Morris Connor was on the piano. He
yes,
too was visually impaired. So
yes,
I had a special bond and appreciation for him because of my grandfather's circumstances by the time I was older. And
yeah,
so we developed that good rapport. He would just start and I would just follow. And
yeah,
then he would accompany and I would go, and it just worked. It constantly worked. But don't ever assume that there wasn't some kind of rehearsal in the background. Anyway, so a lot of performances
mm,
took place with Uncle Morris Connor and Auntie Hazel during those teen years, and the Goretti group would also appear on television. During the Catholic communications years, and that would have been from 1981, 82
yeah,
onward, through
mm,
the college, through the university years, and then back. And we had a number of major events. Pope John Paul II visited Trinidad and Tobago as the guest of Archbishop Panton. And of
mm,
course, the Catholic studios were involved in a lot of the pre-production for that visit. Presenters, some of the freelancers on TTT's Dateline
yes,
needed to take on other responsibilities, and they needed some freelance assistance. And
Yes.
from time to time, they would ask me to come in to guest host
Okay.
alongside Allyson or Judy on Dateline. So that
Yes.
was a start, if only because I was reading, narrating, or voicing a lot of the Catholic communications content that was being produced at the time and being shown on TTT. Right?
Okay.
Then, because I was an editor, technical director, producer, um, audio operator, engineer, etc., on local productions for the Catholic Church. Wherever there was a need to assist in the TTT environment, I would also go in there in a freelance capacity for technical productions, especially around items that needed to be edited overnight. So,
Okay.
fun fact, the fact is that a lot of stuff that gets ready to be shown early in the morning, there are people working at the station late into the night and into the wee hours of the morning to get it ready. I happen to be one of those. Yeah. Midnight to 5 o'clock, you can get a lot of work done. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
True.
and what resulted in it is
Yeah.
that then I became part of the freelance fraternity of both radio and television. So
Wait. So
eventually I left the Catholic Communication Studios.
take a pin right there. So when we
Sure.
saw you at Dateline in the early stages, you were freelancing at that point?
That's correct.
Wow.
Only there whenever called upon.
Yeah.
So I was on the NBS Radio 100 morning show from 6 a.m. to a.m. on some weekdays. And I would normally be the alternate to Tony Lee and Dale Enoch, who eventually became the Tony and Dale show that is now on another radio station, but it originally was on NBS Radio.
Okay.
And then I would rush home to Woodbrook, change to get to Dateline for 10 o'clock. We'd be on the air from 10:30 a.m. to 12 noon.
Okay.
And then eventually by 1994, I
Yeah.
was also doing the online playway draws at 1 o'clock. So you could see that I was on duty from about 5:30 a.m. to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon as a freelancer. Then one day I saw a vacancy advertised at Television House,
Okay.
and I applied for the vacancy of program manager of TTT.
Yes.
I was fortunate to be selected for the role, and I became the program manager of Trinidad and Tobago Television in 1996. Prior
Okay.
to that, I would have been this freelance talent on Dateline, freelance talent on Partytime, freelance talent
Well,
on live events such as Carrie Festa, Best Village, Carnival broadcasts, state visits, because of my religious background, religious events under the Catholic Church, or major national events, Independence Parade, national awards, etc. And at no point in time, Alonzo, and this is really where I seek to impress upon emerging and interested youngsters into the media.
Yeah.
I never went on the air without doing some form of research in order to be on the air. And I'll say it to you now, in 2026, still a list of stuff. In the event that you ask a question, I have data points available that will allow me to be relevant to the question that's asked. It's
Yes.
just part of the discipline. You don't use your natural talent without ensuring that you have accurate information in order to conduct yourself responsibly, because media is about accurate information to the public. That's
Yeah.
what mass media is. Mass media is not bumping your gum because the lights are on, the microphone is on, and
Yeah.
the camera is on. That's called make as if. And you could make as if all you want, but nobody will see you as being credible. So you
Wow.
better get your facts right. Right. And here's the example. You've only asked me questions about accurate dates, times, and occasions in my career.
Yeah.
Because in order for your podcast to be credible, you have to have your information and background information on the person that you're going to chat with. So
Yeah.
there's just testimony everywhere around. Do your homework.
I'm glad the fact that you brought it up, man. Do your homework. I really take pride on what I do. And like you mentioned, man, research is just, it takes me, to be honest with you, my average research time is about 3 days to a week.
Yes.
It all depends on the person. So the bigger the profile, the longer the research, and a
Yeah.
lot of times, as you
Yeah.
know, you just need to be in the know so you can follow the conversation.
But I tried not to burden you with too much. That's all I'll
No,
say.
no, no. Hey, listen, man, I'm in awe. I'm in awe because while you're talking, I'm listening, and of course, I'm connecting the dots and the time frame
Yeah.
also. But you also mentioned party time. So party time, we're going to talk about that. That time frame, you were the freelancer. How did you end up? 'Cause the precursor to party time was teen dance party. Am I correct?
Right?
Right.
And here's the full circle moment again.
Yeah.
Teen Dance Party was in the late 60s up to the early 70s with the person who entered Television House as the weather girl by the name of Hazel Ward, who
Wow.
became the host of Teen Dance Party. When that series was no longer, I suppose, relevant to be produced,
Yeah.
television producers came up with another idea. And
Yeah.
the two were 12 and Under and Teen Talent. And once again, all produced by Hazel Ward Redmond, Auntie Hazel.
Oh
So
wow.
the the head of operation at Television House and one of the senior producers at Television House would have asked me to attend a meeting.
Yes.
I attended, and they said, we want to do a teenager talent show
Mm.
that highlights more of what the current music scene is like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And we want you to be the host of it.
Yeah. Okay.
I said, all right, no problem. But
Yeah.
I gave a condition. I would only be the host if there is a co-presenter with me.
Yes.
And they said, all right, well, who are you thinking of? And I immediately said, Lisa Wickham. Because at that time, Lisa Wickham, myself, and there would have been one or two others were
Yeah.
identified as these youth television faces. Lisa was on Ricky Tikki. I was on 12 and Under.
Yeah.
Her brother Robert Wickham was also on Ricky Tikki. And there were a couple others just from here and there. But
Yeah.
we were the youngsters on
Yeah.
TV.
Fresh
And so
meat.
if you want to do something for the youth, well, let's ensure that we've got some level of equality and equity. And
Yes.
so we became the first co-hosts of Party Time. And that was an 11 to 12-year journey,
Yes.
taking
Wow.
us from the East to the 90s. We eventually both became producers of Party Time and introduced O'Brien Haynes and
Yeah.
Jason Williams and Melanie Hudson and Just Jace and Renee Castle and a series of other co-presenters in the similar vein to ourselves, because we were taught that you don't stick around unnecessarily. You create opportunities for others so that you can advance to the next stages. As you know, Lisa Wickham eventually went into the business of owning a production company and has brought many American and international stars to produce films in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
And I have gone into broadcast media management, corporate communications, government communications, and reputation management. But through that, here's some good fortune. I had the opportunity to manage the visit of former Secretary of State General Colin Powell to Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. Wow.
I had the opportunity to manage the visits of 3 Miss Universes to Trinidad and Tobago. Wendy Fitzwilliam as a national visit as Miss Universe, Mpule Kwelagobe as the 1999 Miss Universe who was crowned here in Trinidad, and Sandra Hawkins, I think was her name, who came
Yes.
from Australia to be one of the persons to crown the Trinidad and Tobago winner.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus, I've been around some of the visits of Lionel Richie and Kenny Rogers and Engelbert Humperdinck to Trinidad under the Spectacular Promotions window. So I had a chance, of course, to contribute to how their visits were managed. It's because I was a performer myself.
Yes.
I was mindful of what they would need in terms
Yeah.
of courtesies for
Yeah.
them to
Yeah.
have a memorable and enjoyable stay in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
So yes, freelancer was that TV person. And even then, I was also eventually a co-presenter for TTT's Panorama at 7 p.m. with Francesca Hawkins, which we did as a double anchor for a number of years. And then I went into management, and as good fortune and good behavior, once you land up in management, well, you step away from the lights and the cameras, and now suddenly I became the boss of all the presenters on television, which is just a humbling thing in its own right, before moving on to other areas. And then subsequently coming back as the CEO of the newly reincarnated CNMG. Then, of course, as you know, I I was responsible for the name change back to TTT Limited.
Oh, so you were responsible for that name change.
Yeah, I'm that guy. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm the guy that
Yeah.
they brought in 2016 when there was an uncertainty as to whether there was an opportunity to keep the station open based on its performance at the time, its ability to perform as the Caribbean New Media Group had perhaps run its course,
Yeah.
and it needed a new model. There was a public consultation that was held, and the public said, bring back TTT. Well, all right. So in my role, there was just one option. If you close it, where will government's voice be heard?
Yeah.
And let's appreciate this was before the pandemic. All right. And fast forward, having presented a reasonable strategic plan with measurable targets within traditional broadcast, but moreover within alternative platforms such as online channels, which of course, because of resources and time, they were not able to execute as timely as they should have. Coffers were low, etc., resulted in CNMG transitioning via a name change to TTT Limited. Just a technicality.
Yeah.
Trinidad and Tobago Television before CNMG, TTT Limited after CNMG. And that was the channel from March 23rd, 2020 to whenever the pandemic ended that facilitated and enabled daily messages to the national community on their health, their well-being, and the measures being taken by the state at that time to ensure the safety of all citizens in the country. I often wonder, would the station to have closed down, where would government's voice be heard?
Well, it would have been filtered. They wouldn't have that full control.
Well, you see, the other channels that are national channels are all private media.
Yeah.
And so the cost could arise for being able to. I'm not sure that they know what national service is from time to time. National service is that in the event of an emergency, you become an essential part of the tool that keeps the nation informed.
Yeah.
The state broadcaster, of which there is only one, has a duty and a responsibility in service to the nation to ensure that the country is kept informed and up to date at all times. That's a more meaningful and powerful role.
You mentioned since we're in the topic of TTT, you were there in the early years, of course, in the early 90s. Were you there around the coup, when the coup took place?
Right. So I held back some information, but you've reached to it. I said there would be another story about the Catholic Communication Studios.
Yes.
So we had a lot of portable production equipment. On the Friday, the 27th of July, 1990, I would have driven out of Maraval Road at about 5:30 p.m., having just dropped religious programs to Television House.
Yes.
I went to get videos. Long ago, you used to go and rent videos for the weekend so that you could watch stuff at home. And the lady at the video store said there was just a report on television, and we saw some persons on the TV with weapons and said that they've taken over the country. And I said, well, what are you talking about? I was just a television house. There was no commotion there. And she says, well, it was just on TV. I said, okay, no problem. And no sooner did I leave the video club, I got a series of calls. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And I made my way home. But by the Sunday, which would have been the 29th of July, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the Army, those with authority, had managed to put themselves in a situation where they knew how to map the way forward from a military standpoint. And one of the ways was to ensure that which was being broadcast out of Maraval Road would cease and that the government's voice would now resume. Allyson Hennessy made her way to the military camp, and she was the one delivering the news each evening. And this supplementary equipment in order to record activities and to go to the various press conferences, etc., came from the Catholic Communication Studios. So I would have been at the same military camp with the media and those of the government to assist in getting content on the air on a nightly basis at 7 p.m. to keep the nation informed. So as a citizen, I served my country during the insurrection of 1990. Alonzo, this is not something that I've shared before, but I think I've reached a stage in life where it is fair enough that it could be shared
Yeah.
because I have far more regard for all who were in Marval Road at the time and at the Parliament
Yeah.
and on the streets of downtown Port of Spain and at NBS Radio who tried to keep a country together in the midst of uncertainty. And that's not an easy road anyone to have to navigate.
Over 40 years in broadcasting, journalism. What actually was your most memorable occasion? But I think that might have been one of them. But I'm still going to ask you the question anyway.
Well, a memorable occasion.
Mm.
During the opening ceremony of the Summit of the Americas,
Yes.
I was placed on a podium, a dais basically, in a fixed position with a U.S. Secret Service individual in a suit
Yeah.
right next to me, but out of shot. But I understood from friends and relatives abroad that they were waiting for the live stream to begin, as in for the live ceremony to begin. But all the foreign media already had the live feed standing by.
Okay.
And in some instances, on certain channels, my image was up in the window of certain news channels in other countries for a little while.
Yeah.
I was standing by for my cue.
Yeah.
I would say live from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to the 5th Summit of the Americas. Please stand for the entrance of etc. So here I was standing on this dais with U.S. Secret Service right next to me, and apparently my image was being seen worldwide as the live feed out of Port of Spain on international channels, whilst those news anchors would have been saying, we're standing by for, these are live pictures from Port of Spain, Trinidad, where X and Y is going to take place. And I was just waiting for my cue. So perhaps my most famous moment was being seen around the world on standby. It was a thrill. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience of working for international media. I've had many good fortunes of introducing heads of state from various countries, including the former president of the United States, Joe Biden, when he came to Trinidad as vice president, the former prime minister of Japan, Enzo Abe, also those from India, those from the Caribbean. Been one of the good. I had the good fortune of being the host for the 50th anniversary of CARICOM when they held their meeting here in Port of Spain in I think 2024. Recently, I also hosted and did the opening ceremony for the Commonwealth Youth Games at the Hazel Crawford Stadium in Port of Spain.
Wow.
That was a couple of years back as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, whenever, so persons may always ask, well, how is it they always ask you to do it? All right. Well, here's my simple answer. Because I won't make my country look bad.
I like that. I like that. That's facts, man.
And why? Because I will ensure that names are pronounced correctly. I will ensure that it's not about me. It's about keeping the show going. So my introductions are brief. And at no point in time will I comment on what anybody as a speaker or personality would have said before me, because that's not my job. A host or master of ceremonies is the glue that keeps you hooked onto what's going to come next.
Yeah.
Because they hold your attention.
Yes. Yes.
That takes a science of its own. And it also, from time to time, requires a bit of reviewing of what is planned. I normally tell people organizing events, are there going to be any surprises?
Yeah.
I say, well, what do you mean? I said, the worst thing for a master of ceremonies to have to encounter is for somebody to come to the side of the stage moments before they go on to say, just to let you know, there's going to be a surprise next. Well, if I don't know what the surprise is, we could have a problem.
Right.
Because how am I going to introduce it? Or how is it going to happen?
Right.
And in cases where there have been surprises that I have not been aware of beforehand, must be personalities and office holders that were in the room weren't very pleased about the types of surprises that were being unfurled or presented to them at that time. So there should be no surprises when you're hosting persons who hold office or international personalities into your country.
I agree, because then they're going to look at you like you knew.
Precisely.
You mentioned hosting. I read that you hosted the Soca Monica as well at one time.
Many times.
Many times. I wasn't sure.
Many times. Oh, yeah. That's so. Remember the singer. So the singing ability and
Yes.
standing in large rooms
Yes.
before an audience, as well as television, prepares you for PSA Ground, Spectrum, the National Stadium, Queen's Park Oval, and wherever else, Grandstand, Queen's Park Savannah, and wherever else Stoke
Yeah.
Monarch was held. What are the experiences like? Again, it's a big show. Everybody wants the show to keep moving. The most terrifying period is when you get the results. And I've been one of those presenters where the results weren't necessarily the results that the large audience was looking out for.
Yeah, more favorable.
And so you've got to know how to manage
Yeah.
how you will announce the results without all the bottles and paraphernalia that they have in the crowd not hitting the backstage area. So that takes some dexterity, but I'm here to tell the tale that we got through that as well.
Okay. So that happened before.
Yeah. Um, uh, there might have been years when so we were at PSA grounds in Long Circular Road, and obviously the crowd may have wanted Iowa, but Super Blue won, or they might have wanted Ronnie McIntosh and Super Blue won, or they might have wanted somebody else and Super Blue won.
Yeah.
So in those instances, one just had to be prepared that the result may not have met with the overall favor of the audience, but that was the judge's decision. And
Yeah.
our job in circumstances is to declare the results. They're really not upset with me.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything wrong per se, but they've got to take it out on somebody, and I just happen to be the object standing in there.
Oh man, that's funny. All right. So like I said, you've been in the media space for a long time. A lot has changed over the years in the whole media
Yeah.
game, media space. Of course, podcast is pretty much, making a big wave in the media space. What's your take and your opinion on podcasting and people that's in the
Right.
podcast space?
So I take it back to the point when I was at CNMG and we had to justify the ability to transition to TTT Limited. We should be making content for screens. We're not making content for television.
Yeah.
We're making content for screens. It just so happens that the equipment that we use is very similar or akin to that which is used for television productions. And so if you take the same knowledge and now produce for the platforms and screens that you want to show up on, your content will gain traction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have paid attention to those radio or audio versions of podcasts that you would have had to produce from time to time on your channel,
Yeah.
as compared with these, which are video, but very similar to what would have happened during the pandemic, where everything was a remote meeting platform that allowed you to have conversations, place lower thirds on, have some music, an opening billboard, help with transitions, etc. That's
Yeah.
all television. That's all production. Notwithstanding, traditional media has a role. Societies still go to what we consider television channels.
Yeah.
Not for the first news, but for validation of the news.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you'll get it on your phone. Yeah.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong in getting a story on your phone. It'll cross your screen, etc.
Yeah.
But somewhere between the newscast of the night or a soundbite or a clip from a story will allow you to watch the actual story coming from what you consider to be a credible news source, and then you believe it. Before, what you actually do is just you're in the loop. You know that it has happened.
Yeah.
You heard that it has happened. But when you see it from one of the legitimate entities, then you believe that it is credible. It must be fact.
Yeah. Fact.
Okay, that's one piece. The other piece is what a world we are in now,
Yeah.
where so much more content can be produced for the purpose of edifying, uplifting, motivating, and being of positive messaging to societies. Were we to be in a position to sit and simply watch Oprah Winfrey, I'm taking an example,
Yeah.
on a live stream for 2 hours, even if she was talking about the clouds and the shape of the clouds, we would watch it. There is a large group that will watch it because it's Oprah. And the challenge now is for the size of the Caribbean, how do we move this is the strategy in me all the time, how do we move the AlonzoBash podcast from just being seen to being appointment content now, where we look forward to seeing the next episode, not because of who's on so much as
Yeah.
the fact that the information is always about us, the Caribbean people, about us being our best selves, about us having opportunities. Because the stories that you have in your podcast are actually the motivators for young people wanting to do podcasts,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
young people wanting to follow in the direction of a politician, an entertainer, a broadcaster, a scientist. People are looking for ongoing screens that have motivation and positive encouragement on them. Unfortunately, you get the good with the bad. So there's also some content that may not necessarily be purposeful that is intruding upon the available audiences that are looking for purposeful content. Bottom
Yes.
line, use your better judgment, filter what you consume.
Yes. Yes. How do you want your legacy? How you want people to remember you when that time comes? For all the work you have done
Um,
with the years.
this is easy. This is easy. He used his gifts, his upbringing,
Mm.
his knowledge, education, and training to be of service to all of society
Yes.
at every opportunity he was afforded. This is an opportunity by itself. No one has asked me to be on their podcast except
What?
for today,
Are you serious? Well, you know what?
except for today.
You probably
And
want.
so,
Go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, so therefore it's a privilege for
Mm.
me. It's an honor to be even asked. And of course, we know that one of our mutual friends who is very much from the party time era was
Yes.
the one who had the passion to put us in contact with each other for some other things that'll come up.
Yes. Yes.
But
For sure.
you then seized the opportunity because you discovered that there's some things that I've done over time and decided to have this podcast. So it's an honor and a privilege for me. Alonzo, all I do is serve the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That's all.
Very well. Very well.
I serve my country.
Very well. All right. So this part of the podcast is called 2000 Questions About Me. It's based on a book that I bought a couple of years ago. I obviously won't ask you 2000 questions, but I would like you to pick a number from 1 to 2000, and the number that you pick will be the question that's asked out of the book.
Okay, let's go with 61.
61. Okay, simple but effective. All right, boom, boom, boom. 61. Wow, this is interesting. Who is your favorite movie director, and what's your favorite movie from them?
My favorite movie director. So she's not a movie director.
Okay.
She's a television director. She's a Trinidadian. She's recently deceased. She is Daniel Diffintala. And because I was asked as the program manager of TTT at the time to find the budget for the production of Westwood Park, and then subsequently to find the budget for the production of The Reef that allowed a local daughter to capture the essence of who we are in a
Wow.
soap opera type series, present it to us, and then eventually have it stream internationally and also be shown on channels in many parts of the world, all highlighting the kind of uniqueness of who we are as Trinbagonians and to a greater extent, West Indian people. Sorry, she's not a film director, so I'll have to say it's Daniel Diffintala and the work that she did to highlight the nuances of us beautiful Trinbagonians.
Yes, yes. Once again, man, you say true to your culture. I'm thinking like, Hollywood, but once again.
Yep. And the fact is, I've been in Hollywood on several occasions as the program manager of TTT and CNMG. We go to the LA screenings. We go to the National Association of Television Program Executives conventions in Las Vegas and New Orleans.
Oh,
I've
wow.
stood in those rooms. I've stood in those rooms. I know those people. We can learn from them,
Yeah,
but we have the goal, our people.
yeah,
And we don't have to go there for us to have a relationship with them in
Yeah.
order for us to necessarily produce the gold so that it shines and it glistens. What
Yeah.
we have to understand is how have they done it successfully and not try to reinvent the wheel, okay? If there are lessons learned from Hollywood, bring them to Trinidad and Tobago and let's improve on them
Yeah.
for the benefit of all.
All right. Well, at this point, man, as we wrap it up, I'm going to give you opportunity to, any last statements you want to make
Yes.
Conclude.
Okay, so first, again, as I started, it's an honor and a privilege to have been afforded the chance to appear on the AlonzoBash podcast.
Thank you.
Secondly, if there are any young persons in your household or family that appear to be quiet, conservative, less vocal, etc., that doesn't mean that they're not paying attention to us as adults. It would be good from time to time to create the environment where you can hear from them, where you can listen to them, where you can learn from them. And wheresoever the opportunity provides itself, give them a chance to step forward. My music teacher in primary school gave me a chance. I made it to a music festival. My grandparents gave me a chance. I went on a television show. The producer of the television show gave me a chance. I ended up hosting my own show. The principal of my college gave me a chance. I landed up teaching through language through television. The governments of Trinidad and Tobago gave me chances. I represented my country on the world stage and introduced world leaders in home soil. My parents gave me an opportunity. I met world leaders and shook their hands. I'm now giving people opportunities because of the examples that have been in my life. You have the opportunity to do the same. Don't lose that opportunity. Continue to pass on to those who are coming forward.
Wow, that was deep, man. I really appreciate that, man.
You're welcome.
Once again, I definitely want to thank you for taking time out your busy schedule. I really appreciate all the works you have done over the years and the contribution to the culture. Like I said, I remember watching you as a kid and hearing your voice all over, till I migrated to the US as a young adult. And you one of those people that we look up to, and maybe one of the reasons why no one have reached out yet because they're nervous,
Yes, I'm the nervous one. It doesn't appear that way, but I always am.
Listen, when it comes to Mr. Wendell Constantine, you gotta make sure, your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted because you have a standard and like you mentioned, the reason why the government trying to bigger call your name when it comes to certain events and so forth is because they know you will represent Trinidad and Tobago very well. And I just want to give you your flowers while you're here, man, to extend my thanks and appreciation once again for all you have done over the years. Your resume is very impressive, extensive, and as I say, I'm thankful and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We all have an opportunity to do the best for ourselves and the best for our country. Don't lose it. Seize it. Make an opportunity out of anything that's handed to you. And always remember, fly the red, white, and black. Promote your country. Promote our people. Shine. All we have to do is shine. Everything will come to us at the end of the day. God bless you, and thanks for the opportunity, Alonzo.
Give thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Wendell Constantine.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the AlonzoBash Podcast. Thank you for tuning in and rocking with us. If you enjoyed today's conversation, leave a comment and let us know your favorite episode so far. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help the podcast grow. You can catch the AlonzoBash Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even on Amazon Alexa devices. Just ask Alexa to play the AlonzoBash Podcast. Until next time, stay inspired, stay connected, and as Alonzo would say, stay focused on your goals and dreams. See you on the next episode.
For the gifts of life, for the air we breathe, for the tears we cry, for every melody, for the times we break, even when we bleed, for the morning sun, I raise my voice to sing glory.